Welcome to the Drilldown, in-depth answers to oilfield questions. I'm Richard Spears.
I'm John Spears.
And we are wondering today about calendars.
And seasonality. Absolutely.
And seasonality, because a few weeks ago we had a little podcast that referenced what used to happen when we drilled gas wells.
Sure, yes.
Which was forever, most of our career.
Right, yeah. In the early days, there was always a spring rig dip, for example. Rig count fell from January 1 to roughly the end of April and then began to recover, sort of trended higher for the balance of the year. That was the old cycle that the industry used to enjoy.
It was unimaginable that spring rig dip would not occur.
Oh, that's right. It had been since the dawn of time. Yes.
So vacations were scheduled around it.
Oh, yeah.
Spring break was perfect because, there's not going to be any rigs running.
Yes, and why was that the case? Well, often, you had a lot of independent drillers who collected money from their investors, but that took time to assemble. And so they spent a lot of their early part of the year doing that. In the meantime, the rig count fell as they exhausted budgets. But once they got funding in place, then they began to put rigs to work, and that led to a recovery in the second half of the year. So clearly we're not tied to the tax man like the industry used to be.
Widows and orphans.
Widows and orphans, those kind of things.
Because now it's a whole different funding mechanism, and that funding mechanism is sort of the size of these blanket resource plays. They're big.
Right, absolutely, yes.
And so you start the year good.
Right.
You get to work, you hustle. But what we've seen emerge over the last few years is that certainly the month of December, so Thanksgiving, and this is unique to the United States.
Right.
Big market here. But you've seen after Thanksgiving, it just doesn't pick up again.
That's right.
And Q4 ends in a whimper.
That's right. We've seen what some have called budget exhaustion. The planning to spend has resulted in monies being spent a little faster than was expected, and perhaps there was some expectation that companies would make up any difference and sustain activity through the end of the year, and in fact, that hasn't been the case. That budgets weren't increased, and so when you don't have the money to spend, activity begins to slide, and it was most apparent when it came to fracking, completion work, because we tended to see rig count sort of hang in there for the last couple of years, but frack activity got a lot softer come November and December. There's a lot of dollars associated with fracking, and so if you're running short of funds, that's one place where you can clearly slow down field work and save money.
So we've been getting calls from clients, guys in the field, money folks, trying to say, is this?
Yeah, what's happening this year, right? What's the pattern going to be?
Well, because is it just how we behave now? Is it the new spring rig dip?
Yeah, right.
Is budget exhaustion and a wimpy fourth quarter? Is that how the industry works now, especially in the United States?
Yeah,
and this is a short podcast because I think the answer is yes.
Well, so I think we have to couch it in terms of what's happening right now, which is that
this could have been a 4-minute podcast because I gave the answer right there.
Well, rig count has clearly down, and I don't think rig count's going to recover much because what we're hearing from operators
is 2020.
2020, and a lot of rigs drilled wells, but those wells were not completed there in the second quarter of 2020, and so you're sitting there with a lot of drilled but uncompleted wells, and we're beginning to see here that operators are saying, listen, I'll complete wells long before I start drilling new wells, and so some rig counts or frac pump truck recovery has begun to happen already. So we're seeing a bit of an uptick here at the start of the third quarter. But the question is, will that sustain itself, or are we going to see frac crew count as well as rig count, continue to be pretty soft the balance of this year? And then, largely speaking, will this kind of thing be with us 2021, 2022, and so forth? So I think there's a tremendous
amount. I'm sticking
with
my answer of yes.
Yeah, you're saying yes. Q4 will end up being soft. Which, if you're right, what that would also suggest to me is that Q1 would be a bit of a recovery quarter, right? Yeah, because because I think then there's just some deferral of work. It's not that the work won't ever get done; it's just being pushed into a new fiscal year, as it were.
Well, and if you look at how we were doing this year,
Yeah.
you ended 2019 on a whimper.
Right.
In January, we all woke back up again.
Right.
In January, February, it was looking pretty good.
Yeah. So again, pretty good was rig count stayed absolutely flat as a die.
Uh-huh.
No change from December to January to February to even early March, but frac activity picked up, right? And so that part recovered, and then of course everything went south on us in a hurry.
Because nobody in the American oil field
Yeah.
reads the newspaper. And what's happening outside of this country, I don't care.
More's the pity, yeah. So, but I think the key here, and the reason we've seen Q4 be soft, is because of the tight capital discipline that operators are showing. That's been the case now for a couple of years, and clearly investors are pushing operators to stick to their guns with regard to capital spending plans and whatnot. And so I agree with you. I think the day is long past now where they find some extra money at the end of the year to get some work done, and I just don't think that's the case anymore.
So you think that Q4 and its softness is the evidence you're looking for that tells you that the oil companies are being disciplined, financially
absolutely right. It's tough. There's a lot of moving parts, and it's a challenge to plan to spend $1 billion and get that all done, exactly when the money goes out the door, exactly when you want it to. So of course there's going to be some overages and underages.
Is that a word?
It now is, but but again, in the past, there were ways that people worked around it in order to sustain activity, and sometimes that meant a little extra money showed up. I just don't think that's the case anymore.
So this works pretty well for the oil companies.
Yeah.
It's a disaster for the service companies because if you look out at the well site, it's not a bunch of oil company folks out there. It pretty much, 90 out of 92 of them are employed by a service company who, like we've said on the last podcast, it's people.
Yeah.
So I've got a soft quarter. That means I've got soft activity. That means I don't want you to come out to the well site. So you, Mr. Service Company, or now more and more Mrs. Service Company, you can't.
Right.
You got to keep your people. And now, if I'm running a service company, how do I manage my people costs? If Christmas time is always my worst quarter.
Right. Yeah.
So what do? I'm going to temporarily lay you all off for November, December. Right. Half of you guys, lose your jobs.
Furlough, whatever, yeah.
Call you in
but we're doing time and a half come January, February, right? Or double time, something like that. Yeah. That's a challenge. Absolutely, right. And again, and the other way it's a challenge is that, again, in the golden era, in the olden days, service firms got to charge high rates, premium rates for being able to show up with equipment and at a short notice, right?
Oh, yeah.
They carried extra people, they carried extra gear so that they could, when something needed done that there wasn't it hadn't been planned, or if things ran long or whatever, the service companies could show up. Cavalry came over the hill, but they charged a premium price for that. Now with all the planning that goes into getting work done, there's just not those kind of emergency occurrences, as it were, unplanned events, and so service firms don't get to charge those kind of premium rates like they used to.
Over the weekend, I was swapping notes with a CEO who runs a big service company.
Sure.
And he was talking about his outlook for the third and fourth quarter of 2021.
Ah, okay, right.
And talking about the seasonality there.
Sure.
About, man, if you're able to look forward a year and be able to at least talk about certain clients' activities a year from now.
Right.
That, yes, you've just described, you have that situation you've just described, which is there are no emergency call-out services.
Right. Because you're planning 12 months in the future, right? And that's just, again, a feature of how this industry is going. The planning is getting extended, the capital discipline is being put in place, and I think that just means that there'll be times when work gets deferred.
So for 2020, unless the price of oil for some crazy reason goes to $85 a barrel around Halloween time, or I call it Reformation Day,
Yes.
then you're setting yourself up for another Q4, which will be lower than Q3.
Well, we'll all have to learn a few new tricks. That's
all right.
for sure.
Well, we'll have that review on January 1st when we do our look back session.
Thank you.
Hey, listen, thanks very much for listening to the Drill Down. I'm Richard Spears.
And I'm John Spears.